Welcome to the Prepare to Shift for Leaders podcast with Dr. Paula Maddox, where each month we explore cutting-edge leadership strategies and best practices that you can apply immediately. Dr. Paula draws from extensive experience working a career with the U.S. federal government and coaching C-suite leaders, executives, and managers from Fortune 50, 100, and 500 companies across the globe. As an author and seasoned executive leadership coach with a doctorate in strategic leadership, Dr. Paula has coached leaders in the U.S. and over 57 countries. By the end of each podcast episode, you'll walk away with proven strategies to lead more effectively, enhance your executive presence, and amplify your leadership impact and influence. Becoming a strategic and impactful leader is challenging, but it's absolutely achievable. Dr. Paula is here to guide and support you on your leadership journey. Here's Dr. Paula.
Welcome to another episode of Prepare to Shift for Leaders podcast series. I am your host, Dr. Paula Maddox, and as an author and a global executive leadership coach with 20 years of experience across a wide range of industries in the U.S. and 58 other countries, I've had the privilege of engaging with diverse leaders at all levels. So in this podcast series, we will explore leadership topics drawn from real-world observations, insightful conversations, and deep coaching discussions. From the C-suite to thriving entrepreneurs and new hires, this show offers valuable insights and practical advice, no matter where you are in your leadership journey. So I'm thrilled again that you are tuning in. So don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share this podcast with friends and colleagues. In this series, we will dive into a wide range of leadership topics that resonate with managers and leaders worldwide. So today's episode is titled, "Excuse Me, I Wasn't Finished." Aren't we familiar with those type of comments? Yes, today we're tackling a pervasive, often frustrating, but incredibly common issue, which is conversation interruptions. Have you ever been mid-sentence, or perhaps sharing an important idea, or reaching the punchline of a funny story, only to have someone abruptly cut you off? Yeah, you know, that feeling of your thoughts being hijacked or your moment being stolen is something many of us can relate to. And it can leave us feeling disregarded, frustrated, and even belittled. But what exactly is an interruption? And better yet, why do people do it? And crucially, how can we effectively respond and help change these behaviors so we can transform them into healthier conversations? I know this topic frequently comes up in coaching sessions with my clients, so let's dive into this a little bit and explore practical strategies for managing interruptions. First, let's clarify what we mean by conversation interruptions. It not only happens at the workplace, place of business, or while participating in virtual meetings and telephone conversations. It also happens with our family, our friends, our children, or any conversation at any given time in any medium, even digital text messages and communication as well. So, at its core, an interruption is the act of breaking the flow of someone else's speech or pattern of verbal thought. It's when someone interjects their own thoughts or actions in the middle of another person's sentence, effectively cutting them off. So, in many ways, it's similar to the feeling you get when someone cuts you off in rush hour traffic. And I think many of us know what that experience is like. But this interruption can be a subtle interjection or a complete takeover of the dialogue. It's important to know and understand that not all overlapping speech is actually considered an interruption. For example, Catherine Hilton's research at Stanford University highlights that whether someone perceives an overlap as an interruption can depend on their conversational style. Yes, that's right. We have to approach communications and conversations with a higher level of mental awareness so we can discern what is actually happening in that moment. The same article from Stanford University offers an example. They state that high intensity speakers or speakers who speak loudly and charismatically might view simultaneous talk as a sign of engagement and friendliness. Who knew? However, low intensity speakers might interpret any type of simultaneous chatter as rude, and they prefer people speaking one at a time. So we have two different perspectives going on here. Given this perspective, it is prudent to take a pause and consider our audience so we do not assume the worst. As I started looking more deeply into this topic, I also discovered there are 3 types of interruptions we should consider and explore. The first type of interruption we'll address is power interruptions. Yes, the power interruptions. I think we see this one most often, and these typically occur when the interrupter wants to gain control of the conversation or assert dominance. This happens when the interrupter feels their viewpoint is more important than the speaker. The second type of interruption is rapport interruptions. So, according to Simon Daly with Grow Traffic, rapport interrupters often intend to build a connection and show engagement. They will often express agreement or finish someone else's sentence to affirm they understand the content being shared by the speaker. This can be seen as a positive interruption with good intent, but it can be exhausting if used excessively. The third type of interruption is called neutral interruptions. The neutral interruptions do not carry power or the intent to disrupt, but the neutral interrupter may interject into the conversation if the speaker has not invited others to participate in the discussion. So, author Phil Taylor with BodyLanguageMatters.com states the intent of the neutral interrupter is to gain additional information or clarity. As we can see, there are different reasons why others interrupt, although it does not necessarily mean that it's always welcomed. In any case, it is always good to have a fuller understanding of how we and others communicate with one another. We have a better perspective of 3 types of interrupters now. So the next question is, why do people interrupt others? Well, there are multiple reasons, ranging from unintentional habits to something more unfortunate, such as calculated behaviors. However, in most cases, many interrupters are very much unaware they are displaying this behavior. And if they are unaware of it, it is usually because it is a common communication method for them. Then again, we must remain mindful that some people find it challenging to read and understand subtle conversational cues. As I have stated several times before, and I think it's worth repeating, I really do, everyone is so uniquely different. And we are, in fact, working in a multi-generational workforce and a culturally diverse global workforce. Every culture has different communication norms and methods, So we must remain culturally agile and not assume we know the intent of others, especially when it comes to interpreting conversational cues. Here are some key reasons why people may interrupt. They desire dominance or control. This is the standard opinion or perception of others when we are being interrupted, and it's understandable. But it is also the reason why it's necessary for impactful leaders to have a high level of emotional intelligence. I unpack that topic of emotional intelligence more in my book titled Think Globally, Lead Strategically, which you can find and purchase on Amazon.com. So let's take a moment to address effective leadership and emotional intelligence. Just for a moment. We need to understand that impactful leaders expand their strategic thinking by considering perspectives beyond their own when they cultivate high levels of emotional intelligence. This emotional insight allows them to assess situations with greater depth and clarity. In addition, impactful leaders respond thoughtfully rather than reacting with haste or judgment, which are often fueled by unregulated emotions. Then again, author Galena Hitchen recently published an article in The Science of People, and she shares additional observations, including ways in which interruptions are sometimes used as a power play. The author also shares research indicating men are more likely to interrupt women than men are to interrupt other men. So when men interrupt men, she says that is often referred to as man-interrupting. Galena unpacks more of her information and research in her article titled 8 Polite and Assertive Ways to Stop People Interrupting You. And I will leave a web link to her article in my show notes. The second reason why others often interrupt speakers is because the interrupter is impatient or feeling eager. This isn't unusual, especially given the fact that we live in a fast paced society where things move far more rapidly than before. In today's culture, the average attention span ranges from a few seconds to 2 minutes, and that is not a long length of time. Therefore, some interrupters may be excited to hear the speaker talk about a topic, leaving the interrupter feeling eager to share their thoughts. Sometimes the interrupter simply feels an urgency to share their ideas and thoughts before they forget them. In that case, it is wise for leaders to always have something to write on or to take notes so they can share their contribution to the conversation at the appropriate time without forgetting it. The third reason why others often interrupt is because they feel anxious or experiencing discomfort, including neurodevelopmental disorders. Now, author Natalie Watkins published an article for Social Self, and she shared some insights on what neurodevelopmental disorders are and how to identify them. Natalie wants to remind leaders that behaviors resembling interruptions may actually stem from conditions similar to ADHD. These interruptions can involve challenges with impulse control, difficulty filtering external stimuli, or short term memory limitations. In summary, individuals experiencing neurodevelopment disorders are not intentionally disrespectful. They may interrupt because they are restless, and interrupting helps them avoid the discomfort of listening. And sometimes interrupters desire to shift the focus back to themselves. Let's face it, some leaders are attention seekers. Or have you not noticed? I know I have many times. So I'm just sharing an observation That's all. But let's look at one additional reason why interruptions happen. The fourth reason why others often interrupt is due to cultural differences. That's why cultural agility is so important. And I emphasize it as much as possible because it's essential to remain aware of the evolving nature of today's workforce. Now more than ever, our teams are multi generational and they are global and they are diverse in countless ways. As a result, communication styles can vary significantly across cultures. For example, overlapping speech or interjecting may be a common and acceptable form of enthusiastic participation in some cultures, and not necessarily intended as an act of disrespect. Understanding this helps us lead with more empathy and interpret interactions through a more inclusive lens. Now that we have talked about four main reasons why people interrupt speakers, let's take a moment to talk about how to respond to interruptions when they happen. I coach on this topic fairly often, and it's crucial to understand that speakers have a right to assert themselves in a professional manner and be heard. I intentionally state that speakers have a right to calmly assert and to be assertive if necessary, not aggressive. So it's important to remain emotionally regulated and not triggered when we feel threatened in any way, because it just is not that serious. But here are a few suggestions that will support you in responding in a calmly assertive manner. Being calmly assertive when someone interrupts you when you're speaking means, first of all, remaining calm and maintaining your composure. We know interruptions can be frustrating, but it doesn't help matters if we react impulsively and the situation escalates. So, we should take a moment to take a deep breath before responding, which supports us in approaching the situation constructively. It's equally important not to take it personally. We should remind ourselves that the interruption may not be about us at all. Maybe the interrupter is excited or has internal needs. When others interrupt, we should respond with professionalism and politeness. Experts recommend several responses we, as speakers, could consider and use when we are interrupted. The first one we can use as a response is this. That's a great point. May I add something to that? This phrase allows us to validate the speaker's point and ask if we can contribute more. Response number 2. I appreciate your input. Let me finish my point and then I will address your concern. This response acknowledges their contribution while asserting their right to speak as the speaker and regain control of the discussion at the same time. Option number 3. Or as the speaker, we can simply state, excuse me, I wasn't finished speaking yet. It is really about having a response ready in your verbal inventory and using the appropriate response based on your work culture, the temperature of the discussion, and who is in your audience, whether it's peers, top brass, internal or external stakeholders. We must consider all of these perspectives. So, when responding to interrupters, it is also important to use the I statements because we need to own what we are feeling and thinking. And we also have at our disposal the ability to ask probing questions about what the interrupter had to say. which can pacify them and allow the speaker to regain control of the discussion. So let's talk for a minute. Let's switch roles. Now, if you are the interrupter, let's not end this podcast episode without recommending ways you can proactively shift your behavior. Number 1, practice active listening by consciously focusing on what the speaker is saying rather than formulating your response. Remember, no one has all the answers. Wink, wink. As a common rule, we should listen 80% of the time and speak only 20% of the time. If you are an interrupter, number 2, take a moment to pause before speaking. Mentally count to 10 after the speaker finishes and before you start talking. By doing so, it gives the speaker time to complete their last thoughts, and it provides you with a moment to gather your own thoughts. Number 3, if you are an interrupter, write down your thoughts. If you're concerned about forgetting your point, which is a common practice, just take a moment to write them down instead of interjecting. And lastly, if you are an interrupter, focus on the topic and not yourself. Please be mindful that the conversation is about the speaker sharing information, which means it is not solely about your experiences or opinions. Try to avoid making every story about yourself. A rich learning environment includes the ability to hear all the voices in the room, not just the voice of the interrupter. So as we wrap up today's episode, let's remain mindful that understanding and managing conversation interruptions is a crucial step towards building healthier, more productive, and more respectful relationships, both personally and professionally. These tips are certainly applicable to all conversations, not just those in a professional setting. When we make a conscious effort to listen more and interrupt less, we not only gain admiration and trust from others, but we also learn more, build stronger connections, and grow as individuals and leaders. It may feel uncomfortable at first, similar to learning any new skill, but the benefits of fostering meaningful dialogue are truly invaluable. Well, that's a wrap for today. Our episode on Excuse Me, I Wasn't Finished. And remember, all the sources mentioned in this podcast can be found in my show notes. So thank you again for sharing your valuable time with me today. If this leadership podcast has been helpful to you, please support others in their leadership development as well by smashing the like, follow, subscribe, or share buttons, and feel free to leave a gracious comment. I look forward to joining you next month as I unpack another leadership topic impacting our work culture today. Until then, keep investing in yourself and keep leading well.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Prepare to Shift for Leaders podcast with Dr. Paula Maddox. Be sure to join us again on the first Monday of every month for more powerful leadership strategies. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to follow on Apple or Spotify and leave us a glowing review. For more information about Dr. Paula and to download her free PDF titled Leadership Communications, the Top 5 Tips, please visit her website at www.preparetoshift.com. That is prepare, the number 2, shift.com.